Hey, we're on.
Hi.
Hi.
Been doing anything today?
Nope.
No.
Actually, I was doing some writing.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was good. Something to think about, something other than what everybody else is thinking about for the last week. I'm like halfway on here.
I don't know what that would be. Like, I've had a low-key day. I haven't done really anything since I've gotten here. Hi. So this is our normal Tuesday Q&A video time.
Yes.
We want to...
More or less.
Yeah, more or less. We want to... we want to talk about some resources. We want to talk about some things to do. Like, as we are all navigating this space of being at home, probably a little more than what we thought we were going to, or maybe not being able to go out, and all of those kind of things. Like what do we do with our time? I can't remember what verse it is because I'm terrible at references. It might be in Ephesians. I think it is in Ephesians. I seem to recall something about redeeming the time, making the most of every opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's the John Mulholland paraphrase. So
I'm not so great at references either. So.
Yeah. So I think it's somewhere in Ephesians. Talks about redeeming the time, making the most of the time that we have. And I know my tendency is when I have free time to sit and scroll on my phone for hours.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the most unhealthy things that we could ever possibly do in our lives, is get sucked into this vortex of everyone else's thoughts and feelings about every single thing that's taking place right now in the world.
Yeah, and that's really easy to do right now because there's a constant stream of new information coming out.
Right.
And we have, well, not necessarily all of us, but I'm thinking of our students that are home for 2 weeks. Guys stay home for 2 weeks. That have a lot more free time than they normally have.
Right.
They're going to start having some assignments, I think, next week from the schools, but even at that, they're going to be having more disposable time than they're used to.
Right.
And it's so easy to just get caught up in whatever somebody says on here.
Right.
In all the different varieties of social media and media that's not social. I don't know if media can not be social.
Yeah, I don't know. Not at this point. So what we thought we would do today is just get together a few different reading resources that have been helpful for us.
Yeah.
We will give, we're actually just going to, at the end of this today, we're going to just recap just some of the happenings at Westway. We have a big, I probably didn't mean to say it like that. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll have kind of a Westway COVID-19 update. That is not this video. This is our Tuesday Q&A video. So while that is part of what's happening right now in our world, that is not the focus of this. We will have we'll talk about a few things at the end of this video, and then tomorrow, mid to late afternoon, we'll have kind of a Westway update over what our gatherings look like, what they don't look like, all of those kind of things, because that too is constantly changing for us. If you would have told me 10 days ago that this is what we were going to be talking about and having consumed our time, I would have told you that you were a crazy person. But that's what we talk about. We have two, like a statewide pastors call with the governor today of Nebraska. At least I do. You're probably excited to not be on that call. So I have that call today. We have a local, it's called the Unified Command, which sounds very Walking Dead-ish in my mind. We have this citywide Unified Command county conversation. And then tomorrow there's this local pastors Zoom call that we're going to have to figure out how we can be involved and engage in our community. So like whatever we say today about what's going to happen at Westway is probably going to be different. So let's press pause on that conversation. Would you like me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I see what's on top of his pile, so.
Yeah. So one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis. I was introduced to C.S. Lewis when I was probably 11 years old to his Chronicles of Narnia. So The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's 7 books in this series. And it's, I would say, fantasy kind of book. So think, maybe if you're not familiar with C.S. Lewis or the Chronicles of Narnia, you're probably more familiar with like The Lord of the Rings, just because they had those movies, although they're pretty old now. I just dated myself. You're probably familiar with Lord of the Rings, so kind of that type genre, sort of, is what I would say the Chronicles of Narnia are.
Yeah.
So fantasy adventure about children, about kids who are middle school and high school age. And I remember reading Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as an 11 or 12-year-old, and just really being caught up in this fantasy world. And it wasn't until later that I learned that that the Chronicles of Narnia was allegory. It was meant to point to something else. It was meant to point to Jesus, and that really opened up a whole new world of thought and understanding for me in those books. Well, C.S. Lewis isn't just a fantasy writer for children, or wasn't just a fantasy writer for children. He also wrote nonfiction, or spiritual nonfiction, or spiritual fiction that is nonfiction. I don't know how you would clarify that. One of the first books that was not like a children's book that I ever read from C.S. Lewis, and it's going to be backwards, I apologize, is the Screwtape Letters. This is essentially this is a book that's written about. It's a series of letters between 2 demons. There's like a major demon and a minor demon, or a mentor demon and a mentee demon, and it's an interaction between the 2 of them of how to tempt and lead astray a person.
Yeah. So
the older demon is giving the younger demon lots of advice on how to lead astray this human being. So it's fascinating. It was published in 1943. So I would love for you to go out and read this and be ready to do some work, because the language is a little outdated. But it really talks a lot about how Satan functions, or at least from C.S. Lewis's perspective, how Satan functions, and the little temptations and struggles that we deal with throughout the day. I would really recommend this insightful book.
Yeah, I think it's good. Sometimes we just get busy doing our thing and we forget that we're in a spiritual battle. Yeah. There's spiritual stuff going on all around us. Mm-hmm. And that book really is, it's kind of a look at what strategy could be for the spiritual dark side, I would say. Yeah. Which I think it gives us a lot of stuff to think about as far as recognizing what's going on around us. Mm-hmm. Where's this stuff coming from that seems to be popping up in my life? And, there's somebody who is scheming against me. Yeah. Because I'm aligned with Jesus. Right. And I got to be aware of that.
Right. The next book, or another book that I would recommend from C.S. Lewis, again, backwards, sorry. This one's called Mere Christianity, and it is what it is what it is. It is the simple basics of what, according to C.S. Lewis, utilizing Scripture, what it means to be a follower of Christ. Yeah. Again, this was initially printed a long time ago. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, 52. So you're gonna have to do some work to really understand what it is that he's trying to say, or that he's saying. One of my I don't think I've ever told anyone this. One of the things that I would like to do sometime is to go through this book and paraphrase it into modern English, and I guess, or maybe it would be a translation, but to paraphrase or translate it into modern English, because every time I read it, like there are so many things in it, and so many times I have to go back and reread sentences because I want to make sure I grasp what he's talking about. But this, like I said, this is just the kind of the basics of what Christianity is, what Christians believe, and how if we can be unified around these core things as Christians, then we'll find greater unity than disunity.
Yeah, I think another thing with that one, not just with that one, but with C.S. Lewis in general, and a lot of others too, but I think specifically with C.S. Lewis, for me, it's not that the language is so different, because you can get used to that, but the work of it is to understand the idea behind what he's saying.
Right.
And he makes you think.
Right.
I think today we've gotten used to reading books for information, reading Google and web pages for information. Even in school, oftentimes the criticism is that they teach you what to think, but not how to think.
Yeah.
And C.S. Lewis forces you to think.
Yeah.
And in the process of that, I think we learn even more how to think.
Right.
Just because somebody forces us. If you're going to understand this, you're going to have to slow down and think.
Yeah.
We're not that good at that always, but
Right.
it really is a beneficial practice for us.
Yeah. And my third and final book is also C.S. Lewis. This one's called The Great Divorce, and this was a new book for me.
Yeah, I haven't read that one.
One of the things that we do each year as pastors is, as all of our staff, is each year we have a staff Christmas party, and we put on a list of things that we would like. So what I've been doing over the last couple of years has been putting books on this list. So The Great Divorce was one that I had.
Let's be honest, that's what we all do.
Yeah, that's true. So I put this book on the list because I hadn't read it before, and essentially it's about a guy who is in hell, and he finds himself on a bus going to heaven, and the whole story just unfolds about the differences between heaven and hell, and like this spiritual journey that takes place after he's dead, and what that looks like. And it's really interesting. Some of my favorite parts of this particular book are when he is encountering people who are on that same journey, and people like that he recognized from his own life.
Oh, yeah.
And different little things that happen, like interactions that they had, and how they engage with one another after their death, and how people respond to one another, and whether they've been changed or not changed. It's just a really insightful book. So my three books, the things that I would recommend, so rather than sitting on your phone all day at home, I would commend to you, I didn't bring them in here, but the Chronicles of Narnia. They're going to appear like they are children's stories, but I would argue they are not children's stories. So Chronicles of Narnia, there's 7 of them, and then Screwtape Letters, Mere Christianity, and The Great Divorce from C.S. Lewis would be 3 books that I would recommend that you spend some time in. And what stinks is now Mike is going to go through his list of books, and I'm not going to be able to interact with him in the way that he just interacted with these, because I don't know if I've read any of those.
I grabbed a bunch of books that aren't, the same kind of books.
Yep.
I've been reading, I didn't bring it in here, but I've been reading a book from C.S. Lewis called George MacDonald, and it's kind of an anthology, just a collection of quotes from this guy named George MacDonald, who was a writer in even older, a little bit more obscure language, but C.S. Lewis credited him for much of what he has written, because he was one of the first to really write in sort of that fantasy adventure genre, and the way this book is set up is just basically it's 365 short quotes or paragraphs pulled out of this guy's works and his sermons. It's really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's one of those, it's hard to read because you have to stop and think. And it's in really little bite-sized chunks. So I don't usually read that way. So that's been a challenge for me to just read one thing and then think about it.
Yeah.
I tend to just flood myself with several chapters at least at a time. And sometimes you don't catch a lot of stuff, like you fly by a lot of stuff that way.
Right.
Do you speed read?
It depends on what I'm reading. Like I wish this morning.
I don't mean like read fast. I mean like my dad, when he was in college, took this course on how to speed read, and he can basically open a book, flip a page.
No, I don't do that.
Flip a page, and he's read the whole, like, just pages at a time. It's crazy. I don't know if I can do that. I haven't ever taken a course.
I
thought it was just a random thought.
I would say, when I was pursuing my master's degree, it probably technically wasn't speed reading, but it was
Skimming.
And then when I was done, I had such a hard time picking up a book for like 2.5 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't read. My master's program ruined reading for me because I couldn't read without underlining and highlighting and like doing all of these things and thinking that I had work to do with it. So I would say I try not. If I have to speed read or if I have to read something fast, then chances are I am losing interest quickly in a particular book.
Yeah.
So if I'm in that space, then that's bad news for me. Then I'm not enjoying the book.
Yeah. I'm bad about, like, if I start a book, I feel like I have to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been a few books lately, and I want to share those, that I started, and then, like, I'm halfway through, and it's just like, this book is taking forever. I don't want to read it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just kind of skimmed through the last several chapters just so I could say it's done. Yeah, and I don't like that. So, sorry, I was trying to look up real quick what the average adult reads. I've seen different statistics about a lot of people get out of school and they just don't read anything.
Right.
You made me think of that when you talked about your master's degree and finished it, ruined reading. I can see that. I'm glad you pulled out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
To me, I think there's so much to be gained from being still and listening to it, like reading through a book, listening to some other author share their thoughts. I really like C.S. Lewis as well. Obviously, that's one of you brought in those, so I didn't have to bring in any of the C.S. Lewis ones I have, and I left several of those at home usually. So, a couple that I brought in. I was thinking a little bit more like specifically for families that are stuck home right now. Maybe to read together, maybe not. This one wouldn't necessarily be something to read together, but something that we used at the last Family Life Workshop. And again, sorry, it's backwards. It's his fault. Actually, it's iPad's fault. But The Tech Wise Family from Andy Crouch. This one I just started reading, actually. I had skimmed through it before because Joe talked about it at the Family Life Workshop. And I started reading yesterday. It's got just really, really good practical stuff about how do we keep from allowing technology to take over our lives and our families. Our families are for something, and technology can either help that or hinder that. It can distract us away from what we're actually for. He talks about the idea of kind of character formation. We're shaping people. That's what families do.
Yeah.
And if we just turn over our kids to screens, we let the screens shape our people, and that's really not very helpful. The world definitely does not need more people who are shaped by the screens and the stuff that we find there. And so it's a good look at how do we get a handle on technology and keep it in its proper place and use it for the purposes that God has given our family. Another book that I brought in, this would be one that would be good to go through with probably older kids, junior high school age. It's called Indescribable. It's from Louis Giglio and Matt Redman. If you don't know those guys, they're really kind of at the edge of what was called Passion conferences. Still is called Passion conferences. They're still going. Louis Giglio is a pastor down in Atlanta. Matt Redman actually is a worship pastor from England, but they co-wrote this. It just talks about encountering the glory of God in the beauty that's around us. He talks about some things in space, some things in the world around us that they really dig into, and how is God revealing himself to us through the world we live in, through the universe that we exist in. It gets a little sciencey, nerdy, so if you're into that kind of stuff, or your kids are, it'd be a great book to go through a chapter at a time with them. Just sit down and go through, or just have them read it and you read it separately, and then get together and talk about it. I don't always do a great job of really dissecting a book with an individual or a couple people like my kids. I do a much better job of saying, here, read this, and then not coming back to it, or saying, did you read it, and then making them give me a summary to prove that they read it. But honestly, this is the kind of thing that you can sit down and read through together. Some of it is a little bit hard to understand probably for some younger kids, but even those can be really captivated by some of the pictures and stuff. It's actually, there's a website that you can go on and look at the pictures that are in here. He has pictures that are taken from like the Hubble telescope and some of the other observatories and stuff, and then he talks about some of the various stars and clusters and different galaxies and how they're shaped. It really is a good, kind of captivated by the wonder of God type of book. And I think that's something that we need to develop in our kids. All of the universe cries out God's glory if we pay attention and listen to it. And so that's a book that, actually I haven't come back to this one for a while, but I would encourage you to check it out and go through it with your kids. Talk about what is God showing us in the world around us. Another couple that I brought in, this is Eats with Sinners. This is from a pastor down in Greeley named Aaron Chambers. This book just talks about what did Jesus do that made him so attractive to the sinners that were drawn to him. And it really boils down to the way that he treated them, the way that he loved them. One of the criticisms that was leveled at him was that man eats with sinners. How good could he be? And there was a reason that Jesus was known for that, because he did. Because eating together was a cultural thing that they did, that joined them together in some ways. And really, for Jesus, eating with somebody, and I would say for us as well, is a great way to acknowledge someone's value.
Yeah.
Like, this is worth me sitting down to have a meal together with you. You are a valuable enough person for me to spend the next half hour sitting and eating and sharing food. And so this book is really an evangelism book, talking about the influence that we can have on people just by simply inviting them into life together. And I think that's something that we need to pass on to the next generation. The next generations are being taught a type of acceptance that stops short of acknowledging someone's true value. It's like, I accept you by not criticizing. And the way they would say it is not judging you.
Yeah.
But essentially what it boils down to is, I accept you by just living my life as if you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You don't bother me, I don't bother you. We accept each other. Isn't that great? The problem is, we're meant for more than just parallel tracks. We're meant for a relationship. And I think we need to do a better job helping the next generations learn how to really love their neighbor, not just live as if he's not there, which sometimes is what modern acceptance really looks like.
Yeah. So I can't comment on the book. But just thinking about, I don't remember where I heard this, but this was a while ago. It was something along the lines of, there's probably not a problem that you have with another person that couldn't be resolved in an hour at Starbucks together. Now, I know that there are lots of significant, like, this isn't about abuse or, like, really extreme situations, but there are so many things, like, if we could just sit down with another person, around a meal or over a cup of coffee, which would be that's my wiring. But like, just sit down and be in relationship with someone and resolve those things. I think also of, we talked about this, all my days run together. Like, it's been a kooky week. But we've talked about this over the past couple weeks of the reputation that Jesus had. And when we stay away from people who are sinners, we are not following the example of Christ.
Right.
So, like, I would be comfortable, and one of my hopes for our Westway body is that we would face the same accusation that Jesus did, which was that he ate with sinners, that he was a drunkard, that he was engaging in all of this behavior, not because he was sinning, but because he was engaging. I want to be careful how I say this. He was engaging in relationship with people who were sinners.
Yeah. And
when we talked a little bit about this Sunday night during prayer time, but in Mark chapter 2, after he called Levi to follow him, Levi threw a party, and it said that the people at the party were tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. And I think one of the problems that we face as Christians in our world today, or some of us face as Christians in our world today, we are so at odds with the disreputable sinners that we don't want to have anything to do with them.
Yeah.
And that's not what Jesus calls us to. And then just the third thing I wanted to say, you were talking about that toleration, that fake acceptance is what it is. I mean, I think as I think about just some of the relationships over the years that I've seen break up between a husband and a wife. In some ways, I think it comes down to that fake acceptance, because we've just tolerated one another, and I don't feel like I can speak truth into your life. I'm certainly not going to allow you to speak truth into my life, but we love each other. But then we wonder why, when we run into some real significant issues and challenges in our relationships, like we just leave, we divorce, we split up, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
And I think part of that stems from a toleration maybe of sin, or an acceptance of sin in the other person's life, an unwillingness to spur someone on to acts of love and good works. That's not just a verse for the church, but that's my role in my relationship with my wife. That's my wife's role in her relationship with me, is to spur me on toward acts of love and service. So what would it be like for all of us to not just see these things as, oh, that's my church world kind of mindset, but how do I do that into my own life? And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. You could probably resolve most things over a meal in relationship. where you're talking about what's going on in the realities of your life. So I haven't read that book, but it sounds like something I would enjoy.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, he's a pastor down in Greeley at Journey Christian Church.
Okay.
I met his friend is now the executive pastor there. I think he was the youth pastor there. I met him at CIY and kind of got to know them a little bit. I met him very awkwardly, actually. I'm not going to tell that story right now, but someday
Tell me later.
I have told it before. I just don't want to tell it right now because it's kind of a long story. So another book that I brought in here is called Play the Man. This is from Mark Batterson, who is a pastor out in DC. He planted a church out there. This book would be specifically relevant, obviously, for men, and especially for men who are raising boys. Our culture today, again, does not do a good job of teaching us what manhood really is. We have, like, one of the favorite phrases this last year was toxic manhood. Last couple years, I guess. We just have a very messed up view of what it means to be a man, and that's passed on to our kids unless we do something else to counter that. We can just live as men and hope that they catch it, or there are some things that we can do intentionally to really make sure that they get a better picture of what it means to be a godly man. God created us to be something, to be someone specific. And that book is a good look at what are the things that we can pursue that cause us to really soak in the heart of God and become the men that he's calling us to be. Sometimes when you talk about being the man you're supposed to be, you get all army and like you get this picture of the gung-ho, macho, strong type of, and that's really not where this book goes, so much as it is discovering who God has created you to be and living fully in that direction. That was a book that I read a couple years ago that was really encouraging to me, and has had some stuff that I've really tried to pass on to my boys. And so that one, that would be a good one while you're cooped up at home, or while your kids are cooped up at home. I don't know if my boys are seeing this at all, because my wife might be watching this, but they're petrified right now, because I just had this big list of books, and they're afraid I'm going to come home and say, you read this, you read this,
Yes.
because I already told them I was going to do that, and give them some assignments while they're not in school. Yeah, that happens a lot at my house. Obviously, I think this is my Bible. I got a new Bible this year, actually this last month. I got this one, honestly, because I found it for like $9 on a sale, and it was what I was looking for, basically. But this one has different devotions that are kind of character sketches of different people. It's called Dancing in the Desert, devotional Bible. If you don't sit down and read your Bible with your kids, at least let them understand that you value the Bible by letting them see you read yours. I think, again, something that we aren't always great at is taking the time to study Scripture together with our families. I know that I don't do that as well as I should. It's been fun as, like just in the last few months, my youngest daughter has picked up, she has an old phone that doesn't have any service or anything. It doesn't have any apps except the Bible app. And so she's been reading that, and this was her own kind of, she had the Bible app on a tablet that she had, but she said, I get distracted by all the other things that are on there can I use this old phone and only put the Bible app on it so that when I have that, I'm not distracted by all these other things? And it's been fun to watch her as she digs into different reading plans that are on the Bible app. And she likes to make verse images that superimpose a Bible verse over some picture or another. And sometimes it's a picture that she's had. Sometimes it's just some of their stock stuff. But it's been fun to watch her study. I don't know if study is the right word, but interact with Scripture more. And I think we need to do that with our kids. We need to have conversations about Scripture with our kids, because they need to know that Scripture is really a vital part of the fabric of our lives, and it can be for them and should be for them as well. I'll share one more that is a little bit
This one I did read.
I wouldn't say self-serving, but
no, it's not
promotional. I don't know. This is a book that I did a couple years ago. You have to write half of it. I only wrote half of it, so it's just a journal that I did. Basically, I did a bunch of devotions on prayer. I went through Scripture and found 40 different verses that talked about prayer or conversation with God. And I just wrote some devotions and came up with some sort of journaling questions that you can answer in the pages there. And I would encourage parents to go through that with their kids. Go through that on your own, but I think some of the activities and questions in there are good conversation starters as much as they are just internal thought process that I think we need to go through.
Is that available on Amazon?
Yeah, that is available on Amazon. Although I might share a different link on here. If we're putting links in, that's okay. It's available on Amazon.
I'm not going to put links on here.
Okay, then we won't worry about it. I have you can buy that straight from the publisher for cheaper than you can get it from Amazon.
Okay.
Like by half. So.
Okay. So what's the publisher's?
It's called Blurb.
Okay.
It's just a self-publishing platform that.
Okay. So if I did like Blurb, Mike Andrews, will I probably find it?
Yes.
Pray, like Google Blurb,
I think you could.
Pray, Mike Andrews, however the Google machine works.
Yeah, and it is, if it's easier, it's on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com type of stuff.
Yeah.
So
each of these books, I would say, are going to be available at your favorite electronic retailer. My favorite's Amazon, just because I get it like the next day, or something like that. Yeah, the day after the next day.
They've been pretty busy lately.
Yeah. So these are just some resources we wanted to share with you, so that you can learn and grow in your relationship with God, even when you're not outside of the norm for what that looks like for you. A lot of the conversations that we've had with you over the last week or so have been talking about a non-normative way that we do things.
Yeah.
We know that there's a lot of different things taking place, and we're adapting. We're making changes to the way we do things, and it really has been, to go back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's been a very fluid 10 days for us, of thinking this is what's going to happen, and then some other thing takes place, forcing us to make changes to what we had planned to do. And I talked a little bit about this in my post this earlier today. There's something happening where we're just becoming aware of what we don't have control over.
Yep.
And I know we've talked a little bit about that over the past couple years of being in that space. And honestly, compared to where I was 7 to 10 days ago on this and where I am right now, I am slowly learning to find comfort in the fact that I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. Yesterday, one of the verses that popped in my head again. I'm terrible with references. I think this one is in James. Don't make plans because you don't know what's going to happen. Don't say this next year I'm going to go to this city and do that thing because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We just don't know. And as anxious as I know, like internally, I feel and have felt over the last 7 to 10 days, I'm learning to work through and push through that anxiety in a way that honors God and just trusts Him that what He's going to do is better. So with that, this is all going to be recap. So I'm just going to do this very quickly, with the exception of this one thing. Last Sunday's message is available on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube and Google Westway Christian Church, look for the blue W with the circle on it. That is Westway's YouTube channel. And for the foreseeable future, you will find, actually going forward, we're going to be posting our sermon content online to YouTube, like from this point forward. So if you, for some reason, if you miss a Sunday and you want to, you've been able to listen to it for a while, but if you want to watch it, you'll be able to see the sermon content. You'll be able to see the video on our YouTube channel. I'm also on Facebook. What we're going to ask you to do is if you log on, or when you log on to YouTube, we want you to hit subscribe, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Because right now, if we were to share our YouTube channel name with you, it's going to say youtube.com followed by a whole bunch of numbers and letters that nobody wants to type in. Eventually, that's going to say youtube.com/Westway Christian Church or something like that. But we can't do that until we have at least 100 subscribers.
So they don't let you choose your own address until you have 100 subscribers. Right. So we need you to subscribe so that we can have an address that you can actually remember.
Right. So
and share with your friends without this random string of 50 numbers.
Yeah. So when you go on there, we would love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can have a customized, personalized YouTube channel name. Really quickly, our food pack with Lifeline Christian Mission is canceled for this week and will be rescheduled. We're in the process of working on that. I got an email from Lifeline today. They are not rescheduling any food packs before May 15th. So it will be at least May until we do the food pack. But we are planning on rescheduling. We're still in the process of evaluating options for this Sunday. We'll have an update on that to you tomorrow afternoon, probably mid to late afternoon. Safe and Secure Church Training that was scheduled for the following Saturday, the 28th, is also canceled and will be rescheduled. We've already worked with group, and we're talking about that. So on my notes, and in the notes there, it says small groups are still happening and encouraged. I would say small groups
are really small.
I'm going to say small groups are still happening. And I would anticipate some changes in that over the next week. It also says Embrace Grace is still scheduled for Wednesday evening. That is now canceled, at least for this week, going forward. Wednesday night programming for children and students is canceled until further notice. Do you want to talk briefly about what that, or do you want to do that tomorrow?
Yeah, I can tease that a little bit, I guess. Joe and I both are working on a couple different options so that we don't have to use the word canceled.
I wasn't supposed to use that word.
We're looking at a couple different options to meet together as a group online.
Yeah.
Or to have, like, that's what we're going to do with the junior high and high school. Joe, with the younger kids, is going to provide some content for them to watch and interact with. And so we're still working out the details for those, but those should be definitely ready by tomorrow night, and we'll share the links and stuff that you'll need over the next 24 hours, 30 hours.
Yeah, probably in that, I would say probably in that Wednesday afternoon, in that Wednesday afternoon update tomorrow that we have for you, we're going to have a ton more information And I guess I would ask that you would just continue to be patient with us, because we're caught up in all of this too, in trying to figure out what we have for technology and can do and can't do.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like I'm on a number of like church tech pages on Facebook, and like every single person is asking the exact same question. How do we like stream our services, record our services, engage people in community via tech? Like everyone is asking the exact same question.
See, you need to get back in the youth ministry groups, because in those ones, everybody has, this is how we're doing it.
Okay.
Instead of asking, there's lots of options that everybody's promoting. This is what we do. This is what we do.
Right.
This is what we do.
Cool. We're going to ask that you continue to pray for our leaders, the national, state, and local. We're going to ask that you continue to pray for healthcare workers. We're going to ask that you continue to pray for your church leaders. It's been kooky, and that's not a complaint. I'm not complaining in the midst of this. It's been a kooky. By the end of the day, like I'm done making decisions. Like tonight, my wife is going to ask me some questions about like what I want for dinner, or do I want like something, and I know I'm just going to give her a blank stare, because by the end of the day, like I'm just done making decisions. So we would appreciate your prayers for us as we have to navigate all of this.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I would say that this is an opportunity for us to love, serve, and engage others in acts that proclaim Jesus as Lord and build other people up. We talked about this right before we came on today. I'm excited, actually. Like, I may not seem very excited right now because I'm tired, but we're excited to see how God is going to use this time for His kingdom. Not just at Westway Christian Church, but His kingdom in Scottsbluff. There are lots of behind-the-scenes things happening with other churches and within our own church body right now that are really positive and really encouraging. And like at the end of this, whenever that is, I'm living in hopeful anticipation that that God is doing something really amazing within the local church. And within the local churches to further proclaim His kingdom, and we can participate in that right now. So I just want to encourage you to love and serve other people. I know someone in our small group is actually going to be baking bread and taking it to their neighbors. So like, what kind of little like things can we be doing? Can you be doing as the church to reach out to your community? Be sensitive to that. So if you like hear that idea and you're like, oh, I could do that, like that could be God speaking to you to do that.
Yeah, I think our neighbors are filled with fear and anxiety right now. Our neighbors are uncertain of what's going on, what's going to happen. We have an opportunity to share peace that goes beyond all understanding right now. As we listen to the Spirit that's inside us, not a spirit of fear and timidity, but a spirit of love and power and self-discipline. As we listen to the Holy Spirit, I believe right now is a great opportunity for the church, which has always been at its best when it's not stuck inside a building, I would say.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for the church to share hope and peace and light to people that are struggling right now to see the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go make disciples.
Do it. You can. So thanks for watching. Hope this was some normalcy in the midst of chaos. And again, we will plan on an update mid to late afternoon tomorrow. We will give you probably 45 minutes notice on our Facebook page. We've been doing that over the past couple days, and that's worked really well. So we'll give you probably 30 to 45 minutes notice of when we're going to be go live on that and share whatever updates that we need to. So thanks for watching. Be Jesus. Get off your phone, get off your device, and go read something that will stimulate your brain to grow in your discipleship. So thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.